Welcome to Artsplanations, the podcast that is for non-artists, artists, and everyone in between.
Each week, we ask a different search engine a question related to art, and then we talk about it. Hello, and welcome back. I am Andrew Malcheski, and with me is
Joanna Bolsons.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of using a search engine to look up a interesting topic of conversation discussion, we are actually going to look at how we would get the arts back into the Olympics.
Yeah, we stumbled upon the fact that the arts used to be an Olympic sport. From 1912 to 1952, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, and literature were all included in the Olympics, and we just knew we had to do an episode on it. All of those artistic endeavors had to embody the concept of sport, so we wanted to kind of hypothesize how could we get this back in the Olympics and what it would look like.
Yeah, for one reason or another, after World War II, the Olympic Committee, the IOC, was under new management, and they made a decision to focus more on amateur athletes. And since artists are generally not amateurs when they're at that level of competition, and it kind of fell out of favor, and it was removed from the games. In '87, professional athletes were then allowed to compete again, and so it kind of opens the arts back up to becoming another Olympic event.
What I really enjoyed was that he wanted to not only showcase the physical attributes of athletes, but the mental attributes and the mental prowess, I guess is the best way to say it. Like, athletes don't have to physically showcase strength, they can mentally showcase strength.
Yeah, and that was Baron Pierre de Coubertin, the original founder of the modern Olympics. He strongly believed that the thing that would set the Olympics apart from a typical sporting event was that it would also have this element of the intellectual as well as like the physical strength of the athletes. So, in the most recent Olympics, the Tokyo Games, there were 5 new events that were part of that Olympics. And that means that, surprise, surprise, the host country can actually submit to have sporting events added to each Olympics, which I didn't know until we were doing some research for this podcast and that factoid.
Yeah, I knew that they were trying to introduce skateboarding and cheerleading to the Olympics, but I didn't know it was a thing that like the host country could just decide.
Some of the new events were skateboarding, surfboarding, sport climbing, and karate. And when a host country submits for the Olympics, there are 5 criteria and 32, or there are 5 themes and 32 criteria that they have to meet in order for it to become a Olympic event. And so we thought it would be good for this episode to go through the criteria and try to figure out how the arts would meet them so that we can get the thing that we're passionate about at the highest level of sport competition.
Right.
And yes, we get the irony of the arts as a sport competition, considering how incredibly unathletic about 95% of the artists I know are.
Yeah. We are definitely included in that percentage.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start off with...
The first theme is Olympic proposal. And the criteria for that one are number and list of events.
So the proposal?
So the criteria is there has to be a number and a list of the events in that theme.
I'm not understanding. Hang on.
So, like, gymnastics is the theme, and the number of events, you have the balance beam, floor, right? So under the umbrella of gymnastics, there are multiple events in that.
So are we saying under the umbrella of the arts would then be painting, literature? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think we could say that Yeah, I think that's what it would be. And we could even go into specific medium-specific competitions, much like the rings is a separate... Like, you might have an art team, much like an Olympic team for gymnastics or swimming, where you have a painter, an architect, a poet.
Well, I was just curious because, like, hypothetically, we're bringing the arts back in, right?
Yeah.
So, under the umbrella of the arts, if you have painting, literature, where would you put in the possibility of dance? Because that's a performing art, but they are also physical athletes.
Well, we'd have to figure that out right now because we are submitting to the IOC for the arts.
We are doing this.
Yeah. So, what are the number and list of events that there would be? I mean, there were 5 originally.
Okay.
Painting, sculpture, architecture, literature, music.
Music.
So, I think...
And we don't know if it was music composing or just performing, right?
I think it was music composition.
Music composition, okay.
So, we could have 3D, 2D, performance. I think you'd have to have something like architecture.
I think that's 3D, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, I wouldn't put architecture into an artistic competition. It is an art form, but it's an art form that's built around engineering and principles of science and math.
I feel like that falls under something that's functional, whereas this is more of an expression.
Yeah, I also think the fact that you wouldn't be able to actually fulfill a full-on building requirement. I think you
would just show a maquette.
Right. I think what you could do, and here would be an interesting thing, is you have architecture competitions for, like, the main stadium.
Ooh, I like that idea. We're creating the actual structure that will host the Olympics is an Olympic event in itself.
Yeah.
That I like. I like that idea a lot.
And so that person, like the firm that wins, because it would have to be a firm. It would just be a person.
Well, no. What's her name? She won. Oh.
Zahid?
Yeah, she won some bid or something, and she designed it.
But she's part of a firm. She doesn't work in a vacuum. She has a team of people that she works with.
But
engineers,
it's her own
architects.
firm, right?
Yeah, but still, it's a firm of people. Like, you have the main designer. She's working with engineers, architects, interior designers. There's, like, a group of people that work together. Because that's the other thing with architecture.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you meant like a conglomerate was going to take it. I was thinking in my head, no, a specific architecture designer.
No, and that's the thing with, like, if it was to be a competition like that, it would have to be a firm because the engineer has a huge say in things, because if your building gonna fall down, it ain't gonna get built.
Well,
right?
What if... Okay, so let's say for music competition, okay, Eurovision, you can submit a song as a composer and a singer, but if you want to do a song with, a 32-piece string quartet, they will supply that.
Yeah.
What if as an amateur architectural designer, you don't have that kind of reach to get an engineer and all that stuff? What if your design is accepted, so they provide the engineer?
The competition, like, you'll get a medal, but also they build your building.
Yeah.
That could be interesting. So for architecture, we're saying that the architecture competition, its event would be the construction of design of a stadium for the Olympics.
Yes.
That means that the architecture portion would take place probably like at the previous Olympics. So if
not before then, I
well,
feel
that's
like
what I'm saying. Like, if you were going to do architecture for the Winter 2024 Olympics, it would take place at the Winter 2021 Olympics.
Yeah, because they have qualifying events years in advance, right? For just regular
Yeah.
gymnastics or whatever.
Years, it's
I think it's 2 years, right?
Is it really? I thought the qualifiers were like a year out, or like 8 months or 9 months out.
But that's just for physical
Right.
stuff. I feel like for something that has to be designed and tested, I feel like the qualification should be you're right, the previous Olympics.
Yeah.
Because that takes time.
Yeah.
And you have to know the hosting country, because then you have to think about where physically
Location.
it's going to be.
Yeah, and supplies.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about supplies, like what the budget is for that specific country.
Yeah. What can you get in Sao Paulo that you can't get in Tokyo, or
Yeah.
vice versa? So that would be the architecture of that, basically. Well, we solved architecture.
Yeah.
One down.
I really like that. I'm super serious. I like that idea that architecture is you have to design the actual building that the Olympics will be hosted in.
Well,
because also, like, you have to think about Winter Olympics versus Summer Olympics.
Well, then what if the art portion of the Olympics doesn't happen during the Olympics? It happens a year before, and all the works made are then displayed at that upcoming Olympics.
Oh, what if... Okay, so...
Okay, guys, we just solved art in the Olympics problem.
So, okay, it's not going to... Because you can't just host it. It takes time to finish. Painting alone, you gotta let it dry. You know, sculptures, you have to let it cure. So, what if it happens in the off years? So, they alternate. Every 2 years, there's winter, summer, right?
Yes.
So, what if the arts then takes place every 2 years?
But on the off years, and then the winners, their work is the commissioned work for the upcoming games. Because as artists, you give me a gold medal, cool, who cares? Who's going to see my work?
Yeah.
Right? And this way, who's going to see everybody who goes through the Olympics, which is, when there's not COVID or a world war going on, a lot of people.
Yeah. So your work is then displayed. They can do the whole ceremony thing where you get your medal, but you're then standing next to your work.
And that could be like, because art takes so much more time than like running a 500 marathon.
And not to dispute that it doesn't take time to train for that, but you have to think about the parameters of creating something versus performing something.
Yeah, 'cause the execution of a sculpture, when someone says, hey, I want that sculpture you designed, the time it takes me to build it, there are a lot of variables, but usually you're looking at 6 months to a year to go through the process of constructing that thing.
Okay. So let's get back to...
Right.
So we solved architecture.
And we solved, like, how it would work.
Yeah.
But what are the number of events?
Okay.
So architecture, we know how architecture would work. You could have sculpture.
So the sculptures...
I feel like...
Because I'm going to say multiple sculptures, right?
It would have to be subdivided into mediums.
Subdivided into mediums. You're also going to have first, second, and third place that would be on display.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to think about the location of where you're going to put first place. Obviously, that's going to be on mass display at, like, the entrance to something, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to choose the location for those pieces based on their place, right?
I feel like there would be some leeway that you could just submit your designs, because ultimately everything would be picked based on a design, and then you'd have to execute. Especially with sculpture, I don't know so much about painting or some of the flat medias. You could still submit a design, like, I want to do a painting like this, but I want to do it 80 by 80, or, you know.
Okay, well, that's another thing. Painting is going to have its own... You said sculpture is going to be divided by medium, so you're going to have, like, bronze, stone...
Metal, stone, wood, cast and fabricated.
So with painting, you would have oils, water media, mural, possibly.
I feel like mural is... I think that's getting too much into the weeds. I think you could say...
Why? Why do you say that?
Because you could do large oil as mural. Right? Like paint on panel.
You could do large fresco as well.
Right.
I'm just saying, but the reason why I wanted to separate that is because the way you view it is completely different. You have to think about this space. With a, 2 foot by 1 foot oil painting, you're going to frame it, you're going to hang it in a specific place, versus a mural, you have to think about where...
Outdoor.
Exactly.
I don't think it would be mural. I think it would just be outdoor work, and they would give you, like, you have up to 80 by 80 or whatever.
So then but I think that's too broad as well, because outdoor work, that can be sculpture, that can be an installation.
Like outdoor 2D.
Oh, outdoor 2D.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there would have to be a category for outdoor 2D, and it'd be like, here are the sites. Here's the site, and I think there would only be like gold, and then if you get silver or bronze, you'd have the opportunity to design for a different, like a bronze wall or I think for that category you'd have to submit 3 here: gold, silver, and bronze.
Like
4 walls. Or you just submit, and each person on that team can only submit 1 design. And it's like gymnastics, where it's scored, and then...
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. But back to sculpture. You have... Where would you showcase them then?
Well, let's just stick with the criteria for now, because I think we'll get into more of the weeds of what it is as we go through this.
Okay.
So there'd be sculpture, painting. Let's do broad strokes, because I feel like we can spend the rest of the episode just talking about the minutia of what we think is. So, broad strokes. You'd have sculpture. There'd be multiple categories. Painting, there'd be multiple categories.
Outdoor work.
I feel like they would fall under sculpture.
Oh, okay, because but there's murals, and that's a broad painting.
I think that would fall under like the category of sculpture or painting. Like outdoor would just be another category.
Oh, under those two.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd have painting, and then much like gymnastics, that would be one of
the aspects. Okay.
The aspects, yeah.
So then there would be performing arts, which would be music, dance, what have you.
I think music would be separate from the performing arts.
Really?
Yeah, I think the performing arts, you'd have theater,
dance,
and performing, artistic, whatever.
But you're saying music, because I was thinking people that play music, people that sing.
I think it would have to be a combination of. I think that's where you would start to divide the music categories. You'd have composition.
So you're saying performance and music. So there's 4.
Yeah, I think those would play a part in it.
Okay, hang on. Sculpture, painting, performing, music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think music, there's enough in music. Yes, there are performative aspects, but in performance, you wouldn't need to be playing an instrument. I think in music, you'd have to be playing or conducting if you had composed.
Okay. And then we already solved architecture, so there's 5.
I think, literature, it'd be poem, short story, novel. No, not novel. I think that's way too much.
Yeah, it's too much. But I like short story.
Poem, short story, and then different types of genres within those kind of categories.
Okay. So there's 6.
What are the other art forms? I mean, I kind of want to say cooking.
People do believe that's an art form.
I think it's an art form. I absolutely believe it's an art form.
I do too, but Anthony Bourdain would disagree.
True. And also, I feel like it would just then dissolve into a cooking competition show.
Which we do love to watch.
I do love watching, which I'm kind of okay with. Like, that actually wouldn't be that bad of a cooking competition show. Like
the Olympic cooking.
Yeah, and then.
And that would be so interesting because your country that you're representing, you're coming with a different set of spices, a different set of how you cook.
Yeah, I think that would actually be a super interesting competition because then exactly, because it would
Bake Off Worldwide Edition.
Yeah, but you'd have to have okay, part of those would be like traditional French, traditional whatever, and then obviously your own host country.
You're gonna want to pander to them, right?
Well, you would have to do something that is like using the ingredients of the country you're from. So if you're American, using the things you find in America.
But also, so when the arts were in the Olympics, the works had to embody the idea of sport. If we are going to add food, baking, cooking, what have you, as an Olympic sport, how are you going to embody the idea of sport? Is it going to be
nutritious food that
that's
athletes can eat?
Yeah, is it going to be super healthy, or is it going to be a giant cake that's in the shape of like somebody running?
I think that's up to the cook.
I mean, I would love, after running a 26-kilometer thing, to just eat a giant piece of cake.
I mean, the other thing is, if we're keeping with the idea of that, like, because this is the art competition that is for the next Olympics, like, all the stuff is showcased there, then that means that their food would then be showcased for the athletes or for the public. And then
who's going to eat it?
Right, who's going to eat it, and then who's going to make it? Because, you know, that 5-star Michelin chef isn't going to show up and be cooking all day. He's going to have a crew of caterers who are going to be following his recipe to prepare everything.
And the Olympics last how many weeks? Is it 2 weeks?
Something like that.
So they're going to have to make that every day, all day? Or is it going to be like the opening ceremony, they're going to have one set of dishes, and then the closing ceremony, one set of dishes?
And maybe it's, you know, gold medal gets 5 days.
You get the truffles today.
Or it's like you have to do it 5 days. Like you get dinner for 4 days and lunch for 4 days. Silver gets 3 days. Bronze gets.
Yeah, but like.
Or it's reversed.
Even if it is only gold medal winners get this, there's a lot of categories that people are winning gold in. That's a lot of food.
Yeah. There's a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if food would be...
Okay.
I think the logistics of food is going to be a lot.
We'll put food on the maybe category.
So we're down to 6.
Yes.
Okay. So the parameters of making the work then. We can nitpick like subcategories all day.
Well, let's just stick with our 6. Because we could also throw ceramics in there, printmaking.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Printmaking would be pretty cool in an Olympic sport because there's so many different ways to make a print as well.
And you could also do like speed printmaking, like who can produce this image, like here is your image and you get a black and white you got to put onto a block and carve.
I feel like that's asking for injury. There are going to be so many people gouging their fingers versus gouging the wood.
No, because if you're a professional wood block carver, you have the muscle memory. You no longer make the mistake of holding your block where you're about to gouge into things.
Or if you make that, quote, mistake, it's intentional because you got to get that angle.
Yeah, and like you're aware of what you're doing and how dangerous it can be. And that's why I'm saying like speed carving, where it's like, here's an image. It's a skull, but you can carve whatever you want, but you have to use that base. And it's all about how do you take that and turn it into something amazing, right?
Plus the idea of multiples, too. So, like, everybody who won a medal would get a print.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge print exchange at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah. And then you could print that and sell it to the audience, like, hey, everybody can get a print. Gold medal $9.99, silver medal $59.99, bronze $10.
Okay, so what's more of the criteria?
All right, so the next one number 2 in the Olympic proposal is competition format, which we've already been talking about the format some of these would take.
Yeah.
You know,
okay, but let's talk about painting. So the competition, you can't just line up a bunch of painters and tell them go. We've already established that you're going to do it the prior year or 2 years.
So I think the way that it would have to work is you'd have to have in each of the different like oils, watercolors, whatever. You'd have to have a long format where you have like, okay, you submit a work that you did starting at like you get a canvas that is marked. Mm-hmm. Here's your canvas. Come back during the Olympics, and then it will be judged.
I feel like, because I mean, as artists, we already have parameters for when we enter shows. Like shows will ask the work has to have been completed within the last 5 years or something like that. I feel like if you're going to get this specific size canvas, they're also going to ask for you to record yourself painting to make sure you are actually the artist.
Well, that's why the canvas would be marked.
Yeah,
so make sure that you're the actual
Yeah,
artist.
I was going to say, like, just marking it, that doesn't mean anything. They're going to want to see that you're the one creating it.
Maybe.
Oh, I'm going to stick my foot in this one.
Okay.
I think yes, because there have been plenty of, controversies where people are like, no, I created this, and then somebody says, no, that's actually mine. You just signed your name.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, you'd have the canvas. And I think there would have to be like a like RFID chip, and then it'd be like, it's here, and then you'd have to have like a live stream on it.
Yeah.
So that you can see. So if they need to, they can say, show us when you made this mark. And like, okay, I did that around day 57.
Or maybe there's like a specific studio that you have to go to work on. No, I don't like that.
Because
no.
if it's a 2-year-long process, you're not moving somewhere for 2 years so you can paint in that one studio.
If I was able to get in the Olympics, hell yeah, I would.
So it's not that you wouldn't, it's that they aren't going to pay you for that privilege. And not 100 competitors from around the world to do that. Hey, put your life on hold and move to the Olympic Village for 2 years. Haha. But I think, something like,
you have to prove that you're working on it.
Yeah. And I think that's fine for like a long format where it's in your home studio. I think you would also have speed paintings where you have 8 hours to produce a work based on this criterion. It's like, you show up, here's your work.
I don't think speed should have to do with any of it.
It's not so much about the speed, it's about the ability to formulate a clear and concise idea and composition within the constraints of the time frame.
But I think the constraint of the time frame is within the 2 years.
As a separate category. So I'm saying, like, much like you have...
Oh, okay. So there's a speed painting round, but a regular painting round.
And they could be completely different artists. You could have on your painting team...
I thought you were adding that on top of the parameters. This is a separate category.
Separate categories. And so...
We should be writing these down. Because I'm getting them confused.
We're recording them. But, like, that's what I'm saying. Your art team, like, you would have a sculpture team. And that sculpture team, like, if you could have 5 sculptors on that team... You would have someone who does, like, bronze casting and mixed media and a wood guy.
Yeah.
And then they would have, like... And the trick of it would be, if you can only have 5 members, there would be 15 categories that they'd have to compete in. So then it's not just like, oh, he's the preeminent bronze guy. Cool, that's one of 15 categories. What else can he do?
Yeah, okay.
Because then it would really showcase, the thing which the arts is about, which is communication... And that idea to take ideas and concepts and turn them into objects and things to look at.
I agree.
Yeah. So, like, painting, there would be several different forms. Same thing with sculpture. Like, you would have a cast piece, which would have to be... You could bring the work you created and then cast it and finish it there. You could have it where you just bring, like, a marble. Because if you're working marble, you ain't doing that in a day.
No.
Like, you're not going to speed through a marble in a day. That takes time and energy to actually plan out. And it has to be planned out if you want it to be really good. And I think all of them would have some aspect of the long form and the short form. And like I said, it would be a team of artists from the host country that would then have to tackle these. And so if you needed... multiple people to work on a project, you could, but it had to be someone who's on that team.
Yeah. I feel like we're just reiterating the same thing.
Days of competition. I think we already covered that with short form and long form. So the days at the actual Olympics, I would say 3. Days
of competition, also the parameters of the 2 years. I feel like the Olympics themselves, it would just be the presentation and the awards ceremony.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have to complete the work beforehand.
Yeah.
Architecture alone, you have to build the thing you have to build the hosting stadium.
I feel like within like that range of presenting the work, you would also have, that's when you'd have your short form competition. So there'd be 2 days of short form competitions where the people who are doing the 8 hours or like the 1 hour thing, those would happen, and then at the end you would announce all the winners of all the competitions.
Yeah.
Quota of athletes and officials.
So we already established teams. Like, you're going to have your group of 5 sculptors, 5 painters that work in different mediums, what have you.
Yeah.
But the judges.
The judges, I think and this is where you would start to run into the weeds of why this wouldn't work, but
it possibly could.
It could work.
I'm going to be optimistic on this.
You would need judges that are from a multiple disciplinarian background from multiple different countries.
Yeah, and I think the multiple different countries is key. It can't just be the hosting country or something with like...
I don't think it should. I think the hosting country should not have any judges.
Oh, they could be biased in that
Could be
aspect.
biased in
But
that
also,
aspect.
like, everybody views art differently. You're going to come at it with your own personal bias. So I feel like...
I feel like in this case, every country would be able to submit 3 judges. Because you'd have the time. You wouldn't need a panel of 6. Why 6? Why not a panel of 100? And that way, yes.
What if people voted?
Oh, there are no single judges. It's left up to... It's blind. So when things are submitted, they're put up online.
Something. I feel like art is so subjective. So to have a panel of judges, that's asking for controversy.
I don't think you should put it up to, like, open to the public, because we know how the public can troll things.
True. It could be chosen as a joke or something.
Yeah, but
now that I said that out loud, that wouldn't work with architecture. Like, oh, this building looks really cool, but it's not logistically going to work.
That's the thing. If you open it to the public, you open it to the layperson's opinion, not the expert's discernment on why a thing should be a thing. I think you would open it up to each country who's participating. They could have 20 judges. So you could open it up to where instead of having 6, you wouldn't need 6, because this is something that would take place over a wide range of time, and it would be 30 or 40 judges who would judge things blind. Like, they wouldn't know who the artists were. It would just be like...
Just the work itself.
Just the work itself.
I do like that. Like, the no-name thing, because names hold a lot of weight, and if it's open to professionals now, you know, Joanna Bolson submitting a work is not going to hold any weight against Natalia Fabia.
Yeah.
You know? I think a blind judge is a good idea.
And also, if you do have 20 professionals, sculptors, literaries, and it's not just, and they judge everything. So you have your sculpture judge also judging music, also judging literature.
Oh, they're interchangeable. Or not interchangeable, they judge everything?
Yes.
Okay.
The entire art competition. That way, you don't just have experts who are like, oh, this is clearly a Andrew Malcheski, the greatest sculptor of all time, because I recognize his work. You're not going to get that, because you're going to get the literary judge who's like, oh, this is a really cool sculpture by some dude. I don't know who it is, but I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so in that sense, it would democratize the judging a little bit more, because you wouldn't have just the experts of the field judging it. It'd be experts in the arts in general judging everything.
I like that idea, because somebody who judges a dance competition versus a sculpture, they're going to view the movement in a sculpture differently.
Right.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah. So that's quota of athletes and officials, and like I said, I think 20 from each country.
Yeah.
For judges.
That's a good number.
And then have those. They would have to be. We have what? 5 categories.
We have 6.
6. So let's do 30, and there's 5 in each category that judge.
Okay.
And then, but they judge everything.
Yeah.
Participation of best athletes.
What does that mean?
It means that you have qualifiers to be on the team, so that they're the best of the best. Right? Just like you have the world qualifiers and the national qualifiers. So if you go to the Olympics, you would have to have qualifying competitions leading up to the Olympic event.
So you have your regional, which would be Texas.
Yeah.
Then you have your national,
Yep.
which would be America, and then okay. Well,
then
that's pretty easy enough.
Yeah.
But would you submit? Would it be the same work? So here's your design.
I think you'd have to be.
You'd have to create a new work
yeah.
every competition.
And those competitions, they would be much like when there's an open call for like a show on water or a show on love, where they would have a specific like this year's.
No, it's got to be sports themed.
Well, then this year's sports theme is baseball. I never would do baseball. Like this year's sport theme is running of the bulls or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think those qualifiers, they would pick something that isn't going to be the theme.
I feel like the arts would pick a sport that's not well known too, like
Baseball.
like your stupid blaseball. But I mean, what year was it where everybody suddenly got really into curling? I had never heard of it, and I feel like that would have been cool if that had been the parameter for the national qualifiers, was you do a piece on curling.
Yeah.
And it would have brought recognition to a sport that's not really heard of.
Yeah, I also feel that there would be things like, how does curling equate to your host country, or like to the host country? Like, what is like the thing that you see that curling is endemic of the country that's hosting the Olympics this year?
Okay.
Because that way, I mean, it's got to push some kind of cultural boundaries, right? It's art.
Because you wouldn't, okay, so using that idea, some country that is landlocked, if the parameter is the cultural significance of rowing, they, you know, some country that's landlocked that might not have really big rivers or something.
That's a great thing for an artist to look at. Like, how does rowing affect this landlocked country?
Like, does it at all? How could it?
Exactly.
How can I introduce this or describe this to my region?
But once again, you're looking for the best. You would want difficult things like that. Like, how does something that shouldn't make any sense here actually make sense here, and how do you make artwork and work about that?
Goes and pops in cool runnings into the DVD player. Like, how do Jamaicans start a bobsled team?
Yeah, like, how does that work?
I like this idea, though. I'm
Yeah.
super pumped.
Venues. Obviously, the venues wouldn't be venues. It would be locations of work to be displayed.
Yeah, we've already solved that.
In that case, I mean, there's already an Olympic committee that's building stuff, the Olympic Village and all these buildings. You would just then have them incorporate like display areas.
Yeah.
And that would be easy enough to do. And because everything's taking place before the Olympics, you would know exactly how many of those you would need.
That would be part of the
Not the architecture, but the
layout.
Design,
yeah,
the layout and design of the Olympic area.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Now we move on to the next theme, which is value added to the Olympic movement.
We already discussed that, though. I mean, the guy who introduced it the first time, it's no longer just about the physical prowess of the human, but also the mental prowess.
But according to the IOC, it has to meet these criteria. The first criteria is games time.
We've already timed it 2 years.
Oh, is it talking about, like, the physical time of each game?
Yeah, because, I mean, like,
okay.
With Olympics, of course, we're talking about the Olympics, but with, like, gymnasts, you have, for your floor routine, like 2.5 minutes or something like that. So we've already got the time parameters.
Cool. Legacy, which we've talked about, it has the legacy of already being in the Olympics once. We're just bringing it back.
Antiquity.
That's right. Youth. It just says youth, like how the youth do arts.
I wonder if it's like, how can you...
TikTok and Instagram.
No, how can you encourage this in young people and get them interested? How will it benefit the younger generations? So it'll push the arts, it'll push artistic expression and healthy self-expression.
Yeah, and, Instagram and TikTok for the kids. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's about... It would also encourage young people to take an interest in the Olympic sporting event who normally are, like us and don't care about sporting event.
Yeah.
And so you would bring in a wider audience to the Olympics.
And now that I'm thinking of it, so you're not going to have 2.5 minutes to do your floor routine, right? You had 2 years to create it. What if they did have a specific segment for the artists where they do an overview, where the Olympic Committee has gone and recorded them working on it in the studio, and they've done like a background, like
artist talk.
Yeah, like a mini documentary where you have 3 minutes to talk about the work.
That's the event. is the artist talk.
You talk about the work, you talk about the inspiration, you talk about how you did it and why it represents your country and the whatever the parameter is that year, the embodiment of.
Do it UN style, so everybody has a little earphone thing so they can all understand each other.
Yeah, and they're just talking about the work itself. That's the time. That's the time in the event.
Yeah. So everybody comes together. The work's done. You figure out who's doing it 2 years before, but then they present the work 2 years later, and it's them talking about it. And so at that point, you can see who did what.
Yes.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that a lot too.
Because,
it's like a little mini 60 minutes on the
also,
artist.
and that is, a vibrant and vital part of being an artist is talking about your work to other people, writing didactic information, writing an artist statement. That is, just as important as the thing that you made. Is how do you speak about it? How do you talk about it at that level?
At that level, that's my point too, and that's what I wanted to get at. Amateurs talk about their work way differently than somebody who has been doing this for years and years and years. So to see a person that's only just started versus somebody that's got their own studio in New York, that would be really cool to see the comparison of their work. Yeah. And just because you can talk about it really, really eloquently doesn't mean the work is good.
And I would even posit that you would first have a blind judge on technique, on the execution, all that first.
Yeah.
And only after all that judging has done, like, you'd have your score like 9.6 on technical. And then it would be like, now we will go to the art part of it, or like the art talk part of it, and then
score them on that.
And then you'd be scored on that, and then it would be a combined score for the total, and that would be like your placement in the ceremony of where you would.
And maybe this is the romanticist in me, but I feel like there should be a segment where it's, or not a segment, there should be a scoring on the emotion given when talking about the work, because you can talk passionately about something.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't talk about the minutia of scoring, because once we get into the weeds of that, it's all downhill. Because then it's.
But I do like the idea of presenting the artist as a segment.
Yeah. So that's value added to the Olympic movement. I think there is definite value added with the arts being in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So now we move on to one of the larger portions, institutional matters. And the first one is years of establishment of the institutional federation. So in order for a sport to be part of the Olympics, it has to be part of the IOC. So that means that...
And that's the Olympic Official Committee?
Yeah. So you have to have like...
Wait, no. Olympic is with an O. IOC? International Olympic Committee?
Yeah. So years of establishment of the international... So you'd have to have an International Federation of the Arts to be established first, much like you have a... There's got to be an International Federation of Skateboarding then and karate. That...
Or as you said earlier, karate.
Right. Yeah. Karate. But you'd have to have... So like when you do your qualifiers, the judges would have to be part of the International Committee of the Arts, so that everybody's being qualified under the same rules and guidelines. So you'd have to write up whatever the Olympic guidelines for judging would have to be worldwide, and that committee would be the governing body of those rules. Okay. So you would need one of those.
Okay.
We don't have one, so we'd have to get one.
Okay.
Year of IOC recognition of that federation.
So we have a year of it acknowledging that it exists?
Yeah, it have to exist for a year, and the IOC would have to recognize its existence for a year. So you can't just be like, I've had a fight club for 12 years in my mom's basement, bro.
First rule of fight clubs, nobody talks about it, so
Right.
that cannot be an Olympic sport.
Nope. Number of world championships held to date. Have you ever heard of the Venice Biennale? There's a world, I mean, I wouldn't call that a world champion of art, but it's the closest thing we get, is those kind of...
But, I mean, there should be... I don't think that would count, though. I think there should...
Right,
we should start another one, then.
It would, yeah, there would have to be world competitions on arts. Which, I'm all for, especially if you democratize it so it's not just the most lucrative galleries and conglomerates that have the money to buy out a stall at those kind of events. And actually make it so it can be open to smaller form artists and galleries.
I'm trying to think how to positively talk about that. Because I feel like... Well, no, because there are Olympians who do fundraisers to support themselves to go to worlds and, you know, go to qualifying competitions. So I feel like artists would do the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, not every athlete's like, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete. You know,
Yeah.
some of them just want to be athletes. You know, how many basketball players, you know, are like, I'm going to be an Olympic basketball player?
I mean...
I don't know, because I don't know any basketball players.
I legit had this conversation at work during the Olympics. I thought the Harlem Globetrotters were our Olympic sports team for basketball. And then as I was saying that, and a coworker started laughing at me, I realized my mistake. But they wear red, white, and blue, so I thought they were our United States ambassadors of basketball.
Podcast listeners, you couldn't see the face that I made at Joanna when she said that. You thought, what? Face?
The Harlem...
Wait. What? How could you... You mean that joke basketball team that always beats the...
They're not jokes. They're really talented. They, can spin 5 basketballs, 1 on each finger.
Right, but they always play against the team that always purposefully loses against them as they...
Yeah, for kids. They
Yeah.
do that for kids. That's my mistake. I realized as I was saying that it was a mistake. But
Yeah.
this is why... this is why I'm not in sports.
Right.
I don't know anything about basketball other than you put in the hoop.
Right. So there would have to be championships for the arts. There would have... all these things would have to be made to happen, because the championships would have to be governed by the Federation of the Arts, which doesn't exist. That's step 1, make the federation. Number of member national federation corresponding to NOCs.
Wait, say that again?
Number of member national federations corresponding to NOCs. So I think that's how many countries are part of that federation. So if it's just America and Canada, I don't think that's going to fly. I think you'd have to get, all the countries that actually participate in the Olympics to want to participate in the event of the Art Olympics, or art as part of the Olympics.
I don't think that would be a problem. I mean, art is universal.
Yeah, I don't think it would be a problem. I think you'd have a lot of countries eager to put up their artists and cultural creators into that kind of competition. Number of national federations per continent that medaled in the last World Championship. Once again, we would have to make a World Championship for there to be medals in.
Yeah, but that's easy enough to do, hypothetically.
I mean, hypothetically, for making an Olympics the art for the Olympics, I keep on saying an Olympic for the arts. Let's see. Other disciplines managed by the IF that are not part of the Olympic proposal. Ooh.
So other disciplines not managed by the proposal.
Other disciplines managed by the International Federation of the Arts.
Oh, they are managed.
Yeah.
Okay, other disciplines managed. So is that the subcategories?
I think it would be they also manage the macrame world finals and the special art Olympics, or whatever it would be.
We didn't even talk about fiber arts.
I feel like they would have to have
I feel like they should.
or it would just fall under sculpture.
Oh yeah, it would be a subdivision of sculpture.
Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, but then you could bring in fashion. And is that wearable art? That could be a sculpture.
So number 18 on this list is gender equality in the executive board or highest decision-making body of the International Federation.
So that's just ensuring that there's...
Fair.
Yeah.
And not a bunch of white guys.
Which,
In
if
the arts...
reading art history has taught us anything,
Yeah.
not to get dark on it, but that's good. They would enforce it. But okay.
And I think that would be one of the easier things to do, is to find a multicultural, multi-gendered group of people to be on that board.
But there's also that Olympic tradition of you have your men's Olympics and women's Olympics where they're competing separately. In the arts, I believe they should be competed together.
And I not for a single second had I thought that there should be a separation.
No, I don't believe in separation at all. I think they should bring them together. But that's just my personal opinion.
So the next one is financial share of income generated by marketing, broadcasting, share of expenditures allocated to development. Whatever the standard is, start there and then figure it out. That's something that I don't care. Like, whatever the money is, I'm sure somebody else can. Anti-doping, compliance with WADA codes. I personally think that there shouldn't be any non-necessary prescription medication allowed on the teams, because the inclusion of drugs and the fact that if it's not like, it's just, drugs are not regulated, which means you wouldn't know what is being distributed or how or why, and it would be too easy for someone to develop drugs that could give them an edge in the competition. Either,
I think this opens the debate, though, for what is an edge in the arts.
money, knowing people with money.
Right, okay, that's an edge in the arts, but I'm talking about when it comes to drugs, what is an edge in the arts? I mean, just to play devil's advocate, there's no advantage, in my opinion, that you're going to get from smoking weed before you do a painting, before you work on a painting. Just to play devil's advocate, I think that's where it's going to become a problem. You know, this past Olympics, they introduced skateboarding, and they were making jokes about how America placed so low in the Olympics because they didn't allow drugs, and like skateboarders are stereotypically seen as potheads. Stereotypically, artists are seen as people that smoke weed or, you know, smoke cigarettes and drink wine all day. I think the regulation would then be challenged in this.
I mean, there are already questions about the use of, like, marijuana. Like, should that be removed from one of the criteria that prevents athletes from competing? Because there's no material advantage in smoking weed.
No.
And that's the thing, like...
We're not advocating or...
Right. As it stands now, the rules for sport competition, the rules for competition at the level is you can't use... There's a set of drugs that you can't use. And it's not just weed and marijuana, it's also things that, like, make you lift better and make you run faster. And that's where, like, weed is not the drug that I'd be worried about. It'd be things like cocaine or speed or amphetamines that keep you up so that you can work longer and work more, make more, do more.
And I think that's also an issue because this isn't a competition on physical strength, but it's mental strength. So you're right, if it's something that's keeping you up longer that you can then work longer on your piece, yeah, that's an advantage.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
No.
But
also, like, ADHD medication. ADHD, yeah. If you don't have ADHD and you take that medication, it's like crack.
It's like legalized speed.
Yeah. Like, it does different things for different people, and so then...
But I feel like people would get fake prescriptions. Or what if somebody just drinks a butt ton of coffee? Is that then considered a drug?
Not under... I mean, maybe. I don't know what the actual drug rules are for competing athletes in this kind of competition.
I don't know either, but I feel like caffeine would be a factor.
And I think you would have to sit down, like, as part of when you make the federation, that's one of the things that you would have to decide what drugs are not acceptable or like you can't have at all. And I think you're right. I don't think you could just say the American drugs that they find illegal can't be in your Olympic athletes or they're done. I think you'd actually have to look at the actual drugs and what they do for the person. Like, you wouldn't want heroin.
Right.
Like,
you don't want heroin for anybody.
Right. Or cocaine or highly addictive substances. Yeah, maybe you'll get a bit of an edge for a short period of time, but it's going to destroy your athlete, and you don't want to promote people destroying themselves to get a medal.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
But I mean, should you then regulate caffeine all across the board? Because what if somebody's just drinking coffee all day? It's legal. It's not exactly healthy, but it is healthier than other stimulants. Like, I feel like this is where things would get nitpicky.
Yeah. But I think you would have to say, you cannot, I think you would have to put some kind of restriction on it. I think you would have to absolutely put down that, while being part of this, you agree that you won't consume more than,
however many ounces.
Yeah, of caffeine. Like, you'll keep your caffeine usage to this, so you're not like, yeah, I drank 3,000 pots of coffee and I'm jacked on coffee now.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, it is still a competition, and you want to see the best of people, not the best of the drugs people take.
Yeah.
And if the drug does give a material advantage, or it alters the thing that you do, even though you're the one doing it, the drug's in the driving seat at that point. It's the crutch you lean on to produce. And I don't think, we can look at historical examples of people who did drugs and produced some amazing stuff while they were on those drugs.
But you also, if we're going to go that route, you also have to look at how it affected their life. Nobody wants to hear about the Olympian who did this amazing piece, but he also got addicted to speed and then
right.
ruined his life and his family.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, there are examples of amazing work being produced while people are on drugs, and their lives went to crap, or they died at the age of 28 because they were doing drugs and drinking and
it's not
into it hardcore.
As much as I want to advocate for making good art at all costs, that's not worth it at that
right.
point.
And so that's what I'm saying. It would be something that would have to be decided by that committee. You'd have to figure it out.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be discussed.
Because you're right, alcohol, caffeine, legal substances that adults use and that artists use would have to be regulated. You would have to be you can't go over the blood alcohol content of this while you're doing this competition.
Yeah.
But then how do you regulate that if they're in their home? I think that's the other thing is
it's hard to regulate if we're giving them a 2-year parameter.
And that's why I'm saying maybe only during the... Well, that could be it. You can do whatever you want during the 2-year parameter, but when you come to the Olympic competition, to the Worlds, you'll be drug tested, which means during your speaking part, if you're used to being on speed, you think your presentation's not going to be jacked up by that?
No. You can't even do it like that because you take 2 years to make the work. Well, somebody taking speed, they're doing the work that somebody could do in 4 years.
Yeah, I think you'd have to drug test.
I think it would be a weekly test. It'd be like you were on probation or something. You go in and you do your weekly test. You submit a hair sample for the month or something like that.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a hair sample. I think not even weekly. I think it would be random. Just somebody would show up at your door and be like, "Hey, I'm here to take a hair sample. I just need to get a couple of your hairs." And refusal would be automatic disqualification.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
And hair sample, that goes back a while. It's you're not gonna get someone else's pee to pass your hair.
And
test.
I feel like people are gonna try to contest it too. They're gonna be like, "Well, I just took the weekend off or whatever." It's cool, but you agreed to this,
yeah.
So you made that choice.
And that's the thing with athletes now who "Oh, I just smoked some weed and they want to kick me out of the Olympics." Yeah, but you agreed to the rules of the Olympics. You made the choice to break the rules. Whether
or not you agree with the rules, you agreed to it at this point.
And that's the reason why I really don't have sympathy for any athlete who I just smoked a joint because I was going through some stuff, and they kicked him out.
No, her mom had died, and that's why she smoked. She stated she smoked the joint, and
right. I get that, but you knew when you chose to do that, you were making a conscious decision.
You're also not thinking in your right head. You are grieving.
Yeah.
But I think it should have been like Simone Biles, where she just said, you know what, I'm going to take mental health and drop out.
That's the point I was going to get to, is that
Okay.
it's a choice that you make, knowing the rules and knowing the consequences of those rules.
Whether or not we agree to them or you agree to them.
Right. Or what
you can fight for them later to get those rules changed. But yeah.
Yeah. We'd have to have a court of arbitration for the sport. So we would have to have a court of arbitration, obviously a group of people in case someone challenged a ruling that could make a ruling on that, or a place where you could bring up grievances. That would be part of the committee. So there would have to be competition manipulation, rules in place to fight against competition fixing, obviously some way to guarantee that the artists who created the work or team of artists who created the work actually were the people who did it. Disqualified for snorting cocaine, didn't then come in later and make work under a pseudonym or for a different contestant.
Yeah.
So there would have to be some kind of...
Or, okay, so somebody who got disqualified for that, could they then come in and work on a team? Or are they just flat out disqualified
I think
forever?
they would be disqualified, well, not forever, but they would be disqualified from the team. Like, if you're disqualified, like, I don't think you... Because art is, it's not something like a physical contest where, like, even if you're disqualified, you can still be on the coaching staff and coach the other people on how to be good. Because art is such a subjective thing. Your input, you know, it's like Michelangelo and his contemporary, where Michelangelo, there's one, I forget the painting, there's a painting by one of Michelangelo's contemporaries where you can see the one figure that Michelangelo gave him input on.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not vastly different, but it's different enough that you can see that clearly he didn't paint it, but his input was enough to cause a visual difference in that one figure and the way that it was executed. And so I think if you're disqualified from all input, like no email, like you can't be on the sidelines telling them, coaching them, you can't be part of the coaching team, you're out. Like, that's it. You can help them in like the preseason and still be like the water boy, but you can't give advice.
Not even in the preseason? I feel like in the preseason they could.
Right, like I think there would have to be regulations regarding what a disqualified person could and couldn't do. You need a code of ethics, availability, and compliance. Obviously, you know, follow the rules.
Yeah.
You're the person doing it. Those kind of things.
People that would come and do the drug test, like that's all in that.
So there would have to be an athletes commission that would be part of the decision-making body that does stuff. Also an entourage commission. I don't know exactly what that means.
Entourage. Is that like people that are just ensuring everybody's safe as they travel?
Maybe. Or like the people who catch people in case they fall in gymnastics. Like the spotters.
Oh, I gotcha.
So like a group of, yeah, I guess you would also like, if you referee like, you know, baseball or fencing or whatever, those people who are there to like not only make sure that the scores are counted, but also the ball boy and all the support people involved.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Okay, what is support for the arts? So support that you have the scaffolding you need to carve this marble sculpture?
Yeah, people to move, art handlers to move the art to and from.
To ensure that you have paint thinner?
Yeah, medical team in case something happens while you're working. A casting crew if you need to cast bronzes.
I really want this to happen, though, because that's so exciting to have, like, just hypothetically, if one of us got in, just to have the resources available to do all of that would be so great.
So these last ones on the institutional matters is a Women in Sport Commission, which I don't think we would need because it would be all-inclusive.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a division of the sexes.
Yeah, it would simply be the arts. I think you would have to make sure that there is a oversight or regulatory commission that does look at the decisions being made to make sure that it's not, you know, certain countries aren't like only picking their male old white counterparts or whatever it is
to be on the team.
Because
the judging would be blind. We've already established that. But yeah, just to ensure that the teams are diverse. And not just male versus female, but also that all people of color are represented.
And I mean, if you look at the scandal with the Russian team no longer being to participate under the Russian flag or Russian national anthem because of doping, like, you need a commission that can go in like that and be like, okay, clearly you're only picking, you know, Broslavsky's cousin because
he's the cousin.
Yeah, he's the cousin of the guy who's running your thing. And then you'd need a medical commission. Obviously, if you're doing, you know, casting or working chemicals, you would need those kind of technical experts to make sure that injury doesn't happen. And then health, safety, and security. How do you secure everything? You need art handlers, a place to secure all the work.
I feel like the art handlers would be part of the entourage.
Yeah.
To ensure that everything's shipped.
But you would need somewhere where, like, a secure location to put everything, or some way to secure everything so that people can't steal it.
Oh, and that it's safe and not destroyed before the next Olympics when it can be displayed.
Yeah. So the next category is popularity, and this starts at 29. Ticket sales and attendance of the last world champion. So you do have to generate money. And in the art game, I feel like that would not be an issue if you're going to the Olympics. The prestige of that competition, I think, would automatically generate buyers who would want to purchase.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like the purchase of the last piece would fund the next year's.
Or be part of the funds. And I think also, if you had it, like, built in the contract, like, they would then, that artist could then have, like, a show at a Saatchi gallery. Like, dude, you're going to sell bank. And because you're the gold medal winner, the world's going to know who you are. Not just the world, but normal, everyday people will know who you are.
Yeah, because the art world, it's so very niche. So, like, unless you're in it, you're not going to know those specific people's names. But an Olympian, like, who doesn't know Apollo Ono?
Right.
That name brings such recognition. Yeah. And I didn't know about speed skaters before him. Yeah. I just knew that he was cute. So, like, bringing that name to the art world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think making money off the arts, which is already something that is 3 or 4 episodes worth of talk, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Media accreditation granted. You would obviously need to be on at least ESPN 8, the Ocho.
With dodgeball.
Yeah. Like, the World Championship would have to be a publicly televised event.
Absolutely.
At least.
Yeah.
If not other competitions being televised.
But would that be televised the same way as the Olympics would be? Like, where it's a documentary on the artist working in their studio, and then it's talked about and they present it?
Or, I mean...
Or is it like where you line up the painters, they all have an easel, and like, here's the speed round?
Or even, like, I mean, in our age, could it just be a YouTube or a stream on Twitch?
Oh.
Does that count as being out there, like, broadcast?
We didn't even talk about digital arts. What about digital rendering? 3D printing?
Yeah, I mean, those are other things to add and think about. Right now we're just sitting with the class. I think getting into the weeds of that, this episode would be way too long. Yeah, so digital media... from the last world's marketing and stuff, I don't think there'd be any problem there.
No.
And then host country popularity. It's the arts. It's popular everywhere, even if it is niche.
I mean, yeah.
It's popular. I think it would be popular enough
that it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. And then business model, potential costs. And the final one is targeted additional revenue during the Olympic Games.
There's no problem with revenue with this.
Yeah. You know, even in the, original Art Olympics, when they had it in Los Angeles, they had 400,000 people going to the gallery where the works were exhibited. And if you charge $1 per person,
yeah,
$20 per person, that's a lot of revenue.
I'm like thinking of different ways you could incorporate it. We didn't even talk about photography. What if there's a subdivision where it's action photography, where they have to then take photos of the other Olympics happening, and then at the end of it, they pick the best Olympic shot of somebody like downhill skiing.
I think the problem with that is you would then have a photographer from every country mucking up the area of the Olympiads, trying to get that shot, like running out underneath the guy doing the ski jump.
But like, you already have
punching each
that.
other and fighting them off.
But you already have that with news crews trying to cover it.
But is that the height of photography? Is that really what you want to promote in photography? Wouldn't it be better to promote, analog photography? Like,
do you want to promote analog where you have to be in the studio?
Oh yeah.
Versus digital?
Yeah. Analog's so much better.
I agree, but I just...
There we go.
But
analog's in. Digital's out. Boom.
No, you
Problem
have to
gone.
include digital, though.
True.
Because if you're going to include digital art at all, you can't then have 3D rendering or anything like that.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, we have been going on a little bit too long already, so let's go ahead and bring this guy down.
Okay. I'm really excited. I want this to happen.
Yeah.
It should be an Olympic sport.
And the thing is, just talking about and going through all these different aspects, it's clear that there is some real positive potential. Like, not just potential, but positive potential where this could be really good for a lot of different people and countries, and a way to elevate, different groups and things. Like, there is some real potential here.
And not just elevate different groups, but I feel like it would then present the arts in such a way that's more accessible, which we have talked about multiple times, where it's no longer elitist. It is for the people.
And I think that would be one of the challenges. How do you democratize this competition so that it doesn't just become something that's only for the people coming out of the Saatchi galleries? Or
that's what I'm saying. Introducing it as an Olympic sport will then inherently make it for the people. It's no longer just those who can afford to go to the Venice Biennale, or those who even know about the Venice Biennale. You tune into the Olympics. We are not sports people. I watch the Olympics every Olympic season.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right.
So we're going to cut it. We're going to go ahead and end the episode, because we could talk about this for hours, because we really want this to happen and we're so excited for it. So if you have any ideas on any other Olympic sports that should be added in the arts division, please let us know, because we want to make this happen.
Yeah, and obviously it's a 1 in a million long shot.
Hey, they got skateboarding in.
Yeah. Skateboarding's also, the arts are also a multi-billion-dollar a year industry.
I think it can happen. I'm gonna remain positive, and if it doesn't happen until I'm 90, at least it happens.
If we get the ball rolling and the Twitter's trending and the Instagrams gramming on it and all the TikTokers talking the ticks about the Art Olympics, then it could.
It could. Alrighty. Well, thank you for listening. As always, I am Joanna Bolsons.
And I am Andrew Malcheski, and hopefully you're you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. It means so much that you would take the time to listen to us. If you like what you hear and would like to help us out, please give us a review and like on your podcast app and iTunes. Comment and tell your friends and family. We would also like to thank the Joy Drops and Free Music Archive for our music.
We want to have a conversation. This means that any research we do for a subject is often done a week or two before we record, and our notes are minimal. This also means that as we talk about things, we might make mistakes, like in the pronunciation of names or the misattribution of a statement or a piece of work, and the messing up with titles and dates. If we do and we notice, we'll put a correction in the show notes. And if we don't, let us know so that we can.
The best place to contact us is on our website, www.artsplanations.com. There you can find out more about us, the show, and each episode.
You'll be able to find every artist quote, and most of the specific vocabulary we use in each episode, as well as a list of upcoming topics.
We invite you to join the conversation, so please let us know what you think. If you have suggestions or topics for discussion, you can let us know at our website, www.artsplanations.com.
If you are curious about our artwork, the best place to find is on our Instagrams. I'm at Andrew Malczewski, that's at AndrewMalczewski.
And I'm at joanna.bolsons.artist. That's JOANNA.BOLSINS.ARTIST.
These links and others can be found on the Artsplanation website. That's www.artsplanations.com. www.artsplanation.com.